Okay.
Yeah. It seems some of your early films are really quite edgy, like that, and then Disco Pigs.
Oh, that was
28
great.
Days Later, obviously, but also Intermission you did with John Crowley.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of sort of independent films, but they're very edgy, and the characters are kind of really kind of out there. Is that just chance? Were you just lucky to get offered those kind of roles and expand your kind of ability to find characters through that?
Or were you looking for something
were you
like
looking
that?
for them? Yeah.
Well, Disco Pigs, that was the play that I auditioned for. That was the play that got made into a movie. So,
oh, wow.
So that was the first ever professional part I had, and then it got eventually made into a film. So that was how that film came about. And Intermission, which John directed, that was also written by an Irish playwright called Marco Rowe. And I don't know, there were brilliant parts for a young actor, really brilliantly written parts.
Yeah.
And I suppose when I did that play, Disco Pigs, written by a writer called Enda Walsh, who's also become a really close friend of mine, I began to realize or understand what good writing was, I think. And the bar had been set quite high for me with that play. And so then I began to kind of, in the later work or the work that happened after that, was to look for writing that I found as satisfying as that. And luckily, Ireland has a great tradition of brilliant writers. So there was a few that I managed to hook up with.
How much of the character, like in Disco Pigs then, was in the script, and how much did you bring to it?
That was all written, all of that.
Really?
He wrote that in a kind of a sort of like a sort of a Cork, sort of like patois, like a Cork slang, invented language, you know, sort of almost like Clockwork Orange or something like that. And so that was all there. I just had to really just try to bring that character to life. I mean, he was 17.
Was Clockwork Orange an influence?
Well, I saw a production of that play in Cork City. That was the one that blew my mind.
Oh, really? Yeah, I can imagine.
And I remember, actually, you guys remember this. Remember when Clockwork Orange, the movie, was like banned and you couldn't get your hands on it.
Yeah.
It certainly was in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I remember then we took Disco Pigs, the play, to Canada, and I managed to get my hands on a VHS of Clockwork Orange in Canada, and I was so proud of that VHS copy, and then watched it over and over again, the movie, wore it out. So I don't know, but you know, at that time you're exploring, and those very provocative, kind of dangerous films are very attractive to a young male actor.
Okay, this is maybe it's a hard question, but back then those independent movies seemed to have so much more life than a lot of film production, certainly being made in Hollywood and more mainstream fodder. Do you miss that kind of edgy material?
I suppose I do, yeah. I mean, a lot of independent film or a lot of the people who created the independent film seem to have sort of migrated to television now, I think, because it's so hard to get independent film financed. It's even harder now, given what's happened in the last year, I think. So a lot of that great writing has probably moved over to television. I think when I was making those films 20 years ago, it was probably easier to raise a couple of million quid than it is now. And people would go to the cinema to see those films. A lot of those films, again, end up on streaming platforms now rather than in the cinema, unfortunately. I don't know. I still try and chase down the good writing. But you're older now, and you know you've done it a bit more. So you try not to repeat yourself, I suppose. Well, that's what I aim to do, to not do.
Yeah. And you also worked with Neil